The world is moving from supply chain to demand chain. What is demand chain? It's where you start to organize your production not based on what the factory wants, but having these demand signals from what's happening in the store and what's happening actually with the product in the home. And we think this is going to be very, very disruptive.
Welcome to Coffee with Mr. IoT, a weekly chat with Robert Schmidt, Deloitte's chief futurist, and the builders, dreamers, founders, and wild children of the IoT universe. This podcast can also be viewed on the Coffee with Mr. IoT YouTube channel.
Hello and welcome to Coffee with Mr. IoT. My name is Robert Schmidt, Deloitte's chief futurist, also known as Mr. IoT. Today on my show I have Steve Statler from Wiliot. You are their SVP of Marketing and Business Development. Welcome.
Thanks very much. It's wonderful to be on the show.
We met, I think it's 2 years ago now. I saw what you did at South by in Austin, and it blew my mind. Tell us what's the one product you're working on, and I don't want this to be a product promotion at the same token. I'm so fascinated by it. It's like amazing. What is it?
Wonderful. So Wiliot's a semiconductor company with a cloud offering, and we're making a chip which enables a computer the size of a postage stamp that powers itself by harvesting radio frequency energy. We're surrounded by radio frequency energy. It powers itself, and this computer can sense, it can calculate, and it can broadcast Bluetooth advertising packets. And it'll cost pennies. And what it will do is enable a whole range of smart packaging and smart product use cases. So where before you needed a Bluetooth beacon that was costing $10 or $20 or even $2, now you have something that's tiny. It can be actually embedded because you don't have to change the batteries. It can be wrapped in plastic or paper, and it can bring products to life. And it's going to change the way things are made, the way they're distributed, the way they're sold, the way they're used, and even the way they're recycled.
So let me make sure I get this straight. When I met you 2 years ago, it was a Bluetooth beacon without a battery. Today, you're calling it a computer without power. Is that what it is? It's a computer that doesn't need a power supply and it doesn't need a battery.
That's correct. So the inputs are temperature and movement, and we can detect tampering. So it has input, and the output is a range of
typically Bluetooth
packets. So it can talk to phones, it can talk to smart speakers, it can talk to the radios in access points. It could even talk to your watch. And it's a computer, as in it has 3 cores. It's got an ARM processor. It's got a couple of other CPUs. So it's a multi-processor computer the size of a postage stamp. In fact, one of the things that we're enabling is a Bluetooth postage stamp. So imagine you've got an Uber-style app. You've ordered your SLR or your iPhone 12 and you're anxious about where it is. You'll be able to see the package coming across the country in your direction because the delivery vehicles will have Bluetooth gateways, the driver will have a phone, and you'll know exactly where the thing is that you're waiting for.
And the power for this computer without power comes out of the air because there is waves, RF, basically, energy around us everywhere, right?
Yes.
And that's what it harnesses.
So imagine you had this superhuman capability of being able to see radio waves. If you kind of look around you, what would you see? You'd see this rainbow of color that through the windows and the doors that would be spilling energy from FM radio transmitters, cell towers, Wi-Fi access points. That out of your pocket there would be this colorful blob coming from your phone. And we're just surrounded by this energy, and we feel like it's just waiting to be used, to be recycled, and that's what we're doing at Wiliot.
So first of all, this stuff always blows my mind, and it's like half of why I love my job. I get to meet with people like you, and I get to see stuff like this. I'm sorry. It's a way understatement. But my question back to you is, so I live in California. And there's a lot of alternative points of view, and one of that is that there's too much waves around us. Is that what you harness? I'm just trying to ask the obvious question because some of my friends are going to go like, well, that's all the dangerous stuff I'm staying away from.
Yeah. I mean, the cell phone is reality. FM radio is a reality. It's not going to go away.
So even FM radio.
Yes.
So I could be on a mountain and there would be FM radio most likely, right?
Probably, yeah. So our first generation product is going to harvest energy from IoT devices, from the cell, the cell phone transmissions on your smartphone. But we've got a roadmap, and our third generation product will harvest from the antennas that surround us everywhere. So it's there. Arguably, we are diminishing the amount of RF in there. We're like a little sink. It's not a serious part of our value proposition. We actually have had companies come to us and say, hey, we want to make a shield out of your product. We're not going there. No, I think the fact is we've got this ubiquitous source of energy, and we think that this is going to unlock a whole set of use cases that simply haven't been possible before. So the tags have been too expensive, or there's too much maintenance, and we are already working with 19 large companies across a broad range of industries, fashion, logistics, furniture, telcos, and they're all looking to change the way they do what they do and have clothing that is intelligent. So imagine a tag in every item of clothing you wear. Probably wouldn't have this problem. We probably wouldn't have this problem, but it can keep track of when you last wore this shirt. I think we're all going to remember the last time you wore that shirt. But this kind of tracking what you like is actually an incredible opportunity. If you think about state-of-the-art recommendations, it's what? Amazon. Amazon knows everything that you bought from them. But they don't know whether you actually liked it. You bought that shirt. How often is this the last time you're going to wear that shirt or not?
No. I've worn it a few times. I'm really worried now the next time I see you that I wear the same shirt. So I need that tag in there now so that it actually makes sure when I meet with people I don't wear the same clothes.
So the point, yeah, exactly. So the point is we can tell how often someone is wearing. Is that your favorite shirt, or is it something you wear 3 times? If we can do that, we can actually help the people that make shirts make something with a more sustainable physical life and an emotional life. So, one of the problems that we have is we buy things, we don't use them, we throw them away. And if we can really understand what people like, we can maybe charge a little bit more for something that's more sustainable. That's one of the use cases we're working on.
Well, I started my career at Procter & Gamble, and one of the things I learned there is that the biggest disconnect happens when the product goes to the retailer. You lose touch with your product. You might work with the retailer close enough that you know what shelf it's on, or you paid for shelf or something like this, or certain locations. But really, once it goes to the consumer, you lose touch. And with something like this, you can actually, it's so cheap that you can have it in many products, and you actually keep knowing what happens with it. And when you talk about temperature and humidity in clothes, I have a pretty good idea that I don't wash my clothes with the right temperature. So you could tell me that, right? And so therefore you'd extend the life of my clothing, for example, and do stuff like that.
Absolutely. So imagine you're stuffing your clothes in your washing machine, and if you have a tag in your red shirt and your white shirt and your washing machine, which by the way probably has a Bluetooth radio in it already, it can actually tell you that, hey, maybe unless you want pink shirts, then you should pull that other one out. So that's we're working with a company that makes washing machines, and this is a use case they tried to do with RFID a few years ago, but the cost of RFID readers was so much it just didn't make sense. Now Bluetooth is everywhere, and so we're just piggybacking on the fact that smart speakers and appliances are already connected. But I just want to come back to something that you said from your P&G days, and you've really put your finger on one of the use cases which is a little less far out than the ones we've been talking about, but we think is really strategic. And I'm going to borrow a phrase from one of your colleagues. the world is moving from supply chain to demand chain. What is demand chain? It's where you start to organize your production not based on what the factory wants, but having these demand signals from what's happening in the store and what's happening actually with the product in the home. And we think this is going to be very, very disruptive. We actually have customers that are preparing to do demand chain now. And what this looks like is exactly what you said, which is you're a brand, you don't own the retail environment. So you don't really know what's going on in the store. And so it becomes very difficult for you to organize your supply chain in a very efficient way if you don't know what's happening. If you have tags in the product and you have a little Bluetooth gateway, costs $50, talks to the cellular network and sees what's on the shelf, suddenly you can see these products disappearing from your display in real time. If you have that real-time view of the use of the purchase of your product, then what does that give you? Well, it gives you the ability to make less of it, to have a leaner supply chain, and to make sure that the right product goes to the right place. You can actually have smaller delivery vehicles and run fewer routes to get that product into the right place. And this is super disruptive. The challenge is it's so disruptive that companies need help. They need to, what is the ROI on that? It's probably hundreds of millions of dollars. But we think that brands will need help from companies like Deloitte to figure that out, to kind of be the impartial external view of what they can expect to save and what they cannot expect to save. And also, what does this mean to our organization? Suddenly, 1 minute we were experts in fabric and dye and color,
yes.
And now we're shipping a computer which is attached to fabric and dye.
Now my customers expect from me that I know what happens with my clothing. No. I'm an expert in how to buy the right raw materials and make fashionable product. I'm not an expert in working with you. So, yeah, total shift, absolutely.
So that means, people need to, the CEO level, it's figuring out, do I have the right people that can make this happen? I've got an SAP system, but my technology people are not involved in creating my product. So it's interesting times.
I guess I'm curious about one thing so you and I were just imagining use cases, and while we talk, I come up with color in the washing machine and
Yes.
stuff like this, right? You probably thought of this before, but I'm just sort of we had a lot of use cases, and they're very different. And so therefore, I wonder, when you make a product that's that different, that enables so many new things, how do you build the ecosystem and the surrounding, I don't want to call it a platform, but maybe it is a platform that actually supports so many different use cases, and obviously probably use cases you haven't even thought of today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real issue, and it's a good problem to have. This is like a Lego brick. You can build anything with the Lego brick. We're, of course, focusing on where we see maximum business benefit. We see demand chain as being an example because our customers are already investing. So we have, even though we've not shipped the product, volume production is in April of next year. We've got large brands that are paying for early access to it. And so we have a sense of where the most value is. But really, if we're going to change the way things are manufactured, suddenly give people a view of what's happening as the product's assembled, and where every tool, every batch of raw materials, every batch of finished product, that's a lot of partners. And we just make a chip and a cloud service that manages the privacy and security of decrypting the ID. So a big part of what I do on the business development side is talk to companies that will produce products that will work with Wiliot, and that includes the folks that make the Bluetooth devices, making sure that the spec is right to work with our products. We're working with some amazing software companies that are creating the applications that will sit on top of that. So there's going to be a whole ecosystem of those. Companies that make the printers that can help personalize the labels that will go on the products that will have our tags in. And then lastly, working with the consultants who get it at a strategic level but also have the skills. And it's a really interesting combination of media skills, technology planning, change management, program management that can help customers embrace the opportunity.
So I heard that you started working with some of our European friends at Deloitte. I don't even know how far along that is, so I'm not going to say who or what. All I'm going to say is like, oh my God, I should have, when I saw it 2 years ago, and I was excited, it just was very early, so I'm glad that we're starting with this. Where am I going to see the first product actually in product? I know you said mass production April, and I'm not sure how much you can say, but what are going to be the first type of products I'm going to see it in? Am I even going to know it's in?
Yeah, you will in many cases. So I can tell you the kinds of customers that we have and in general terms what they're doing. So we're working with some of the largest fashion companies in the world on some of the use cases that I'm talking about. You know, one of the phenomena that is feeding this, it's not just us coming up with this technology, is a move to serialization. So it used to be your car has a serial number, right? The VIN number, and maybe drugs have a serial number, but now everything is getting a unique identity. And why is that? In order to manage recalls, traceability, authenticity, grey market detection. So if you have a unique birth certificate in a product, then suddenly you can tell if this thing is the real thing or a fake thing. So if you look at our investors, maybe you'll get some clues from that. So our investors include Amazon, Alibaba, Samsung, Qualcomm, Merck, German the venture arm of Merck, the German pharmaceutical company, and Avery Dennison. So that gives you a little bit of a clue. And then in terms of the early Advantage program members, it's apparel companies, companies that make furniture, companies that make eyewear, companies that do logistics. So I think we will see value-added delivery services that give you the ability to have an Uber-type picture of your package coming close to you. And I think we'll see lost and found tile-type use cases in gloves and jackets. And who knows, you may actually be able to keep track of your socks and find where that missing sock is gone.
I once saw this comedian talk about how socks walk out of the washing machine. Yes, I do need that. So I have, in closing, a very different question for you. I introduced you as Steve Statler, but you have a nickname like I do, Mr. Beacon.
Yes.
You have a podcast on the Mr. Beacon. And my question, I get asked this question all the time, so I'm going to ask you because I need advice. People ask me, what are you going to do if you don't work as closely with IoT anymore? If they change the name, are you going to become Mr. Whatever? What are you going to do? Are you Mr. Computer now because it's not a beacon anymore, it's a computer? What are you going to do?
I don't know. The Mr. Beacon thing is a double-edged sword. I actually hate the name, but I used to call the podcast The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Beacon System. No one can remember it. And so Mr. Beacon was actually kind of a joke at my expense. I was speaking at a conference and this guy said, "Oh, where's Mr. Beacon gone?" He didn't realize I was standing behind him, and I thought, oh, well, maybe I should, you don't get to choose the nickname. So I've got it, like it or not. I'm going to write it, and technically what our computers do is they're an intelligent tag, so maybe I should be called Mr. Tag. I don't know, it just doesn't sound quite as good.
We made a video originally for our IoT practice, and when I did this, the guy who produced it and wrote it, he showed me a video. There was a Mr. Wind, and it was a French video about a French wind turbine company, and he called himself Mr. Wind. So we made the Mr. IoT video, and that's how it stuck with me.
Very good.
Probably a few people know this, but that's how
great.
mine came about it.
The
I really
origin
thought it wouldn't
story.
stick, and suddenly people find it really funny. So, what do you talk about on your podcast? What was one of the latest shows?
Oh.
Interesting anecdotes.
My goodness, there's been so many. Well, one of the things that
How often do you broadcast, and when do you?
I once every 2 weeks we put something out. We just hit our 100th show. You wouldn't think there were 100 people to talk to about Bluetooth beacons, but we've had Cisco, Aruba, Google, and then a bunch of amazing CEOs of IoT companies. We've got an episode that's about to come out, which I'm really excited about, which is about the return of the physical web. So this is there was a standard that Google created that had Bluetooth beacons broadcast URLs rather than cryptic numbers, and it basically meant that a browser could be used to browse physical objects and generally places, and you'd see this URL, it would pop up on your phone, you didn't have to type anything in, you'd click it and you'd get information about the place. But we've just joined the Physical Web Association because we think that the idea of being able to browse the objects that surround you is really, really cool. And so we're supporting that, and we invited the founders of the Physical Web Association to come on. So that's one that I'm excited about. I've been doing a lot on angle of arrival. So angle of arrival is a new part of the Bluetooth standard that is very, very disruptive. It's basically going to take the accuracy of beacons from 2 or 3 meters down to almost centimeters. So your phone will know exactly where, if one of our tags broadcasts a Bluetooth packet, if you have a device that has angle of arrival in it, you'll be able to exactly locate where things are.
So I don't need 3 beacons anymore to get the exact position. One is good enough?
Exactly right. So you have one tag, and you can actually have, with 2 locators, you can see where the thing is in 3 dimensions to an accuracy of less than a meter. I actually think this is going to be very disruptive, because I think we under-delivered on the promise of Bluetooth beacons originally. There was a lot of hype, and then people started using it for wayfinding, and the dot was moving all over the place. Angle of arrival works. They're using it for tracking the ice hockey puck in Finland.
Are we going to get a puck that we can see on TV now?
Yes, you can. You can see the data. You can see the ice skaters moving around. That puck goes at 100 miles an hour, and they're tracking the accuracy of that thing with Bluetooth. So there's a beacon in the puck. So there's a Finnish company called Cooper who've been pioneering that, and now Bluetooth SIG, who define Bluetooth, have adopted what they call 5.1. And so we've had the Bluetooth SIG on. They've been talking about that. I think it's going to change real-time location, asset tracking, very disruptive.
Last question. What does someone like you, who lives so far out in the future, have at home in terms of IoT and technology?
Oh my goodness. The usual stuff. I have a Tesla that's kind of connected, so that's the thing that
kind of connected. That updates itself.
I know. It's like I'm expecting the update, and suddenly it's just going to completely change the way it behaves. I have the fire alarms, the doorbell, I have a few things. Pool controller, lighting. So that's the stuff that I enjoy.
That's awesome. Steve, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh,
it's a good
Mr.
pleasure to see you again.
I loved it.
The Mr. Beacon and IoT get together.
Indeed, Battle of the Titans. Very good.
It was a battle? I didn't know it was a battle.
I don't know. It wasn't really a battle. It was friendly. I enjoyed it.
Me too.
Thanks for listening to Coffee with Mr. IoT. To subscribe or to listen to more episodes, search for Coffee with Mr. IoT in your favorite podcatcher, or find us online at deloitte.com/us/coffee with Mr. IoT. To watch the video version of our show, go to YouTube and search Coffee with Mr. IoT.